are we supposed to do when Christians, giants of faith, so to speak, when people that we looked up to over the years fall? All of that and more, and maybe some practical advice on how we can respond to this coming up. Alrighty, my name is Josh Snyder with Josh Snyder Music. I'm a Christian music artist. I dabble in a little bit of every kind of music. My favorite musicians are probably Toby Mac and For King and Country. I just love diverse music. So anyway, check out what we have out so far. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. There will be a lot more like this on the way. And so hit the little bell notification to get notified whenever we drop another More Than Music video. All right, jumping right into today's topic, since it is a fairly large topic and I want to be as clean and cut and to the point as I possibly can be. The question on my mind, and over the years, as I looked around and seen many people who I've looked up to fail or fall, or there's some people over the last handful of maybe 100 years ago or 150 years ago or 1,000 years ago that we look back to, who we look up to, so to speak, but we saw them fall greatly and heavily in their life and in their faith. And that same faith that they professed, they either changed up or they dropped their morals and principles altogether and just threw their hands up and went into the shadows, so to speak. There's a handful of people I'm going to list out here today that not necessarily just to gossip about their failures, but I'm trying to drive home a point by the end of this video. And so if you stick around, I've got 4 people that I have on this list, and actually a mystery person at the very end of this video that I will list out as well. I think you want to stick around for that. So let's jump right in. First person on the list is one that I'm sure you probably have heard about if you are in the music space, in the Christian music space that is, much. His name, he goes by the stage name of Gawvi, and it is a sad story. I'm not going to get into all the details necessarily, but just in touch and go for sake of context, let me read this little article from sportsskita.com that came out 2 days ago when the news dropped from Reach Records. Christian hip-hop artist Gawvi has been dropped by his label, Reach Records, over accusations of sending unsolicited and inappropriate photos to several women while married to his wife. The allegations came shortly after the musician announced that he had divorced or decided to divorce his wife, Brianna, after being separated from her since 2020. There's a handful of things that go into this, and some people might hop on here and say, well, what if some of that's not true? And okay, that is not the point of this video necessarily. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, stick around for a little longer, you'll get it. But from what it seems like, the Christian music artist Gawvi has come to such a place where even his label, who was trying to hold on to hopes that there wasn't as much to this as seemed or as alleged, a year prior, that same label who's built a relationship with him, who's gone on tour with him, who's made money off of him, dropped him. And their statement was they didn't feel that he held up to their core values, and they challenged anybody who hears about this to pray for him and his family. I did a little video when it first released, the news first released, and that video took off. If you want to check out, there's a little bit more information about what I'm listing out in regards to the specific details of Gawvi and the things that he went through in the video right up above here, or a link down below. I'll link it below. But the question that I'm going to ask at the very end of each of these is going to be the same question: what should our response be? What should our response be? The next person I want to examine really quickly is one of my great heroes of the faith. I quote him even still today. He said, one of the most famous quotes that he said was, "I have little doubt that the single greatest obstacle to impact the gospel has not been its inability to provide answers, but the failure on our part to live it out." This man stated that it was our fault that the gospel is not being effective because we are not living out the gospel. This man, if you know anything about maybe the picture that you see on the thumbnail here, or you've heard the quote before, his name is Ravi Zacharias. This man died about a year and a half ago, I think it was, maybe coming up on 2 years now. And here, let me just read off of my screen here just some quick information. A 4-month investigation found that the late Ravi Zacharias leveraged his reputation as a world-famous Christian apologist to abuse massage therapists in the United States and abroad. Over more than a decade while the ministry led by his family members and loyal allies failed to hold him accountable. This article comes from ChristianityToday.com. It goes on to say, he used his need for massage and frequent overseas travel to hide this abuse and behavior, luring victims by building trust through spiritual conversation and offering funds straight from his ministry. This is all stuff that came out in a 12-page report, as this article goes on to say, released Thursday by Ravi Zacharias' International Ministry, or RZIM, confirms abuse by Zacharias at day spas he owned in Atlanta and uncovers 5 additional victims in the U.S., as well as evidence of sexual abuse in Thailand, India, and Malaysia. Even a limited review of Zacharias' old devices revealed contacts for more than 200 massage therapists in the U.S. and Asia, and hundreds of images of young women, including those that showed the women naked. Zacharias solicited and received photos until a few months before his death, May 2020, at age 74. I remember when they came out with the announcement that he had passed, it saddened me. I loved this man and his work. I loved what he did for the kingdom, and the effects of what he did for the kingdom will live on past his death. But what about the failure? What kind of response occurred when this man lived a double life? Wouldn't sit here and talk about things that went on in some of the giants of faith, so to speak, life, if there wasn't substantial evidence to point to that. And even Ravi's own team, the team that built up around his ministry, that loved what he did, that promoted what he did, and made lots of money because of it, their own team went and did an investigation, came out with 12 pages full, like jam-packed, of information showing that he was not appropriate in the way in which he conducted himself in his personal life. And he even used money from ministry to continue this. We don't have time to get into all the details on there. You can look it up if you want to look it up. But let's move on to the next person I'd like to examine really quickly. Have you heard the song that goes like this? When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Horatio Spafford. I looked up to this man, and I still do in many regards, but as if he's on this little list that we're examining here really quickly for the sake of a point that we'll wrap it up here at the end, then you know that there's something a little off going on here. Many have sung this song in church growing up, and I'm not against the song. I'm not the kind of guy that says if that man or that woman has failure in their personal lives, don't sing the song that they wrote. I don't think that's biblical. I don't think that it takes away from the meat or the truth of the song. But Wikipedia goes on to document, a few other places, if you look it up, it's pretty well documented, that Horatio Spafford, after the passing of his daughters and the ship that went down, and that is why he wrote the song, It Is Well With My Soul, after the passing of his daughters, following the sinking of the ship, Anna, his wife, gave birth to 3 more children, Horatio, Bertha, and Grace. On February 11th of 1880, Horatio died of scarlet fever at age 3. Final tragedy after a decade of financial loss and personal grief accompanied a lack of support from their church community. Began Horatio's psychological move away from marital success toward a lifelong spiritual pilgrimage, so to speak. Let me explain what I mean by this here. It goes on to say, Anne and Horatio Spafford soon left the Presbyterian congregation Horatio had helped build and hosted prayer meetings in their home. Their messianic sect was dubbed the Overcomers by the American press, and in August of 1881, the Spaffords moved to Jerusalem as a party of 13 adults and 3 children to set up an American colony in Jerusalem. Colony members, joined by Swedish Christians, engaged in philanthropic work among the people at Jerusalem, regardless of their religious affiliation, without proselytizing motives. So they did good work, they did good deeds without sharing the gospel, gaining the trust of local Muslim, Jewish, and Christian communities. Here's the kicker of all this. The community required both single and married adherents to declare celibacy, and children were separated from their parents. Child labor was used in various business endeavors while in Jerusalem. Now, I know sometimes people, when they write an article about what they see, they'll blow some things up a little bit, but there's multiple articles, including the very sect, the Overcomers, whom Horatio started in the 1880s, that admit that when Horatio set up this colony, they required, he and his wife required everyone in the colony to basically renounce their marriage and to no longer be the parents of their children. They separated children from homes, they split up families because Horatio got to the point where he felt that the family unit was no longer a viable unit or a godly unit. And on top of that, they didn't share the gospel. They just did good things in the name of doing good things. A couple more examinations here we're going to take here, and then I'm going to tie it all back to one point. This isn't just a gossip line. Hold on. Have you heard the song, "Thank you for giving to the Lord, and I am alive that was changed"? Probably not, especially if you're in my generation. There's many other songs written by this GMA Dove Award winner named Ray Boltz. He also wrote a song called "I Pledge Allegiance to the Lamb." Released songs in an album that just took off in 2002, and his last tour was in the Christian circle was in 2004 when he retired from the music industry. In 2005, he separated from his wife, and then later on in 2008, he came out openly as gay. And I don't want to beat any of these guys up more because honestly, that's not the point of this. I want to list out what was disclosed, what happened, and some failures for a purpose, so don't cut out yet. He came out into the Washington Blade and disclosed that he was gay in 2008 after separating from his wife in 2005 and then finalizing a divorce in 2008 prior to coming. So this giant of faith who is a proponent for marriage and family in Christ separated from his family, divorced his wife, and then came out as a homosexual. And you can go read up into that more if you want. But I looked up to this man, and I still look up to a lot of the songs that he put out and the passion behind those songs. Again, I don't want to cut down the good work that he put in for the kingdom, but there was some open failure. The last person I'd like to examine here is a person who's very near and dear to me. His name is Josh Snyder. Now, Josh Snyder is not a perfect individual. If we each stopped and looked at ourselves in the mirror, we would not see perfect individuals. That is not to say or excuse sin. That is not to say that Gawvi's record should not have dropped him for sending nudes or asking for nudes from ladies while he was married. And even while he wasn't married, that's not good conduct, especially for somebody who holds the name of Christ as Lord. Ravi Zacharias' team should have did the investigation, and there should have been more accountability, and maybe there were some things early on that they totally missed. He failed. Gawvi probably had some failure. Horatio Spafford and his family in their endeavors blasphemed God. There was some failure, though we see that they did some great things for the kingdom. Ray Boltz, amazing musician, did a lot of amazing things for the kingdom, affected thousands, if not millions, of lives around the world through his music, and had some failure, some very deep failure. I consider myself, when looking at this list, and wonder, how do I get to there? I don't want to ever get to there. But how did they get to that point? There's a verse in Proverbs, I think it is, that says the little foxes spoil the vineyard, which just simply means that there are little things that creep in unawares in each of our lives, and if they're not taken care of, they will grow, and they will take things down with, and they will pull things out, and they will separate our morals, and they will get us to a point where we throw our hands up, if allowed, to continue to grow and give up, as many of these people got to that point. So I want to challenge you. I don't just want to sit here and gossip about people's lives, but when those who you look up to fail, the first response should be prayer for them and their families, understanding that we ourselves are human and we ourselves are a few steps away from that very place. The second response should not be to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let me explain what I mean by that. Do not throw God out the window because somebody failed. Somebody who professes and holds the name of Christ to be Lord failed. Because we're all going to fail in some ways. God forbid, in any large ways that cannot be redeemed easily. But when those who we look up to fail, do not throw God out the window. God is still God, and we are still humans. And there is a flesh and a devil out to get us and our testimony and the things that God would have for us. There's a devil who has some things for us as well. And when any of us start to stray from that narrow path, we will find destruction. Thank God for His eternal grace and allowing us to get right back on the path in many senses. But there's going to be consequences for our failures if allowed. For example, Gawvi may not have a mended relationship with his wife, at least very easily, if there were to try to make it work again, because he abused her trust. And we could go on and on and on about people. We think all through Scripture. We think of David, one of the mightiest men, a man after God's own heart, had some failure. He murdered and committed adultery, and God still forgave him. So our first response should be to pray for these people. Pray that God reconciles them, that God strengthens them, and that God continues to give us the strength to live the way that He calls us to live, to be the lights and effective witnesses for the kingdom. And then the second response should be to not lose faith, not lose our trajectory moving forward for the kingdom because somebody else, a mighty man or a mighty woman of God, have failed. Let me leave you with this example. I was commissioned to be a salesman for this large company, and they have a product that was so good that it worked whenever you needed it to work. Let's just say it was a face product. They had a facial cream product that took away all the acne on anybody's skin. They've tried it on every type of skin, and they found that this is the go-to product. And then I was commissioned to go out and sell this product. Now I'm going from door to door, and as I knock on the door, I bang on it, and they open the door, and I start screaming in their face of how good this product is, and then I take it, and I throw it at them and beg them to buy it from me. Any sane person won't buy it from me. Or if they do, it'll just be to get me off their steps. But we have been commissioned to not sell the gospel, but to present and to give the gospel to a lost world. And even though we may fail at presenting it sometimes, that doesn't make it any less true. That doesn't make it any less powerful. That doesn't make it any less the way. So I hope I've given you some food for thought today. What are your thoughts on this particular topic? Let me know what you think. Drop a comment below. Smash that like button if you haven't already, and be sure to subscribe. I'm Josh Snyder, signing out.